Have you ever noticed how boring a lot of popular media is? Of course you have. People won't shut up about it. Oh, there's so many sequels nowadays. What happened to original ideas in Hollywood? Well, I'm here to throw gas on that fire. I'm Jack, I ramble, and today I want to talk about art. There's a very good reason movie studios keep rehashing ideas and making sequels. I'm not blaming them for that. I mean, in the eternal words of Drew Gooden,
You know why they keep making them? Because they make a shit ton of money every time. And you know why they make a shit ton of money every time? Because you keep going to see them.
which that's what it's all about, huh? The bottom line. It's all about making money, and the easiest way to do that is to appeal to the lowest common denominator. Unless you start gambling, then you'll get rich real quick. But this leads to so much mainstream media being so bland. Take music, for instance. I don't even really consider pop music to be a real genre because it's really just a formula that's popular and therefore safe. Like, yeah, now that means drums, a 1-4-5 chord progression, and really pretty vocals, but at one point, this was pop music. So was this. And at one point, even this was pop music. Look, all I'm saying is that pop music is another way of saying music that is really easy and safe, and usually pretty boring. Because it's so by the numbers, pop music tends to be written, produced, and even conceived by people who aren't even the headlining artist. Take Umbrella by Rihanna, for example. It was written by 5 people, none of which being Rihanna. In fact, it wasn't even originally meant for her. It was meant for Britney Spears before it was handed off to her. Or Havana, I don't know, by Camila Cabello. It was written by 11 whole people, only 2 of which being on the song, which is insane to me. I mean, how much of the headlining artist that you're supposed to be a fan of is actually shining through in these songs where they almost had no hand in creating it? Now, let me take a step back here and explain what I'm actually complaining about here. Because I'm sure that there will be people who will say, "What do you mean? Havana and Umbrella are great. Just because they're not written by the actual artists who perform it doesn't make them slap any less hard." And yeah, I completely agree. But what I mean by good art isn't something that just looks or sounds pretty. In my opinion, which, side note, this whole video is just that, my opinion, but in my opinion, good art is authentic and real. It really says something about whatever experience, emotion, feeling, or whatever else the artist went through. It's something that the artist really put time and effort into and really cared about making as good as possible. Good art, again, to me, is raw and unabashed and undeterred. It can be music or a movie or a video or something visual, but it's always raw and like authentic. It doesn't have to be crazy either. I mean, this video is art. It was sparked by an emotion, but my dad didn't have to die for me to make it. And I just don't think these songs have a lot of genuine emotion behind them. I don't feel like the artist is really speaking to me through the song, really has something to say. I just feel like they want the paycheck. Movies are like exponentially worse at this too. Because of how big of a production they are, it really balloons this problem out. Maybe the original writer actually had something to say, but it was distorted by everybody else working on the movie. Not to say they didn't care necessarily, but just to say everybody had a slightly different interpretation of what they wanted to see on the big screen, and so that original writer's interpretation is kind of changed. It's kind of like the ship of Theseus. There's a lot of fingers in this pudding, and a lot of the times the motivator is making money rather than art. I mean, I think the reason a lot of people don't like a lot of the sequels and reboots and MCU bullshit is because it's so clear that nobody actually cares about the movie. They didn't want to make art, they wanted to make rent, which isn't a problem. I mean, get your bag, obviously, but it just doesn't make it art. All right, wise guys, so what is good art? That's a good question. Also, nice shirt. Thank you. You don't look too bad yourself. Oh shucks. I mean, I mean, I think the best art I've seen is from random people online who have had nothing else better to do. For example, look at Liam McKay. If you don't know, he's a very sad person who makes very sad music for emo angsty teenagers. And despite him not having a label, his biggest project has over 4 million monthly listeners. His music isn't good, by objective standards anyway. I mean, his voice is crackly, the guitar has this natural distortion from being poorly recorded, and the mixing is just not great. But that's kind of what's beautiful about it. The cramped, uncomfortable feel just kind of adds to the emotion of the piece. I'm more likely to connect with something when I can actually see the emotion and how it's being delivered. One project of Liam's that exemplifies this is Dead Calm. It's generally more energetic than a lot of his other projects, especially in the vocals. He uses a lot of layered vocals that are really screamy and yelly, and you can feel the emotion in every single word. Take Oh My God, for instance. The shaky, screamy, cracked vocals convey so much emotion. It's one thing to say in your lyrics, oh, I'm so sad, or to just use minor chords, but it's a whole nother thing to like have a mental breakdown on the mic. But when I showed my girlfriend this song, she hated it. She thought the vocals were really annoying and that the audio quality was really shitty, which is true. Again, it's not objectively good art, but it is good art. If that, I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. It's like the vocals of Midwest emo. They're whiny and broken, but so are the singers, so it works. Another example is Nah by Alex G. The entire production has this really off-kilter, helter-skelter feel, which just adds to the emotion of the piece because it's about a really creepy guy. A lot of big video games suck, at least at first. These big studios will announce a project with a timeline that was never going to happen. But they don't know that. These billionaires don't have to make the game. They can just underpay and overwork their employees. So the people who actually are working on it will work on the game as much as possible, effectively building a track for a train that is already barreling towards them until release day comes. And of course, because this is what everybody's been telling their superiors the entire time, the game is laggy. It doesn't work. It's not ready. Most games are glitchy as hell on launch, and I cannot stress enough how much that is just because of money. I mean, I don't even have to say anything about Cyberpunk 2077, so I'll just show you. But with most indie hobby projects, the game comes out completely polished. It's like giving birth to an already well-adjusted 18-year-old rather than a needy infant. Actually, I don't know about that one. For example, Faith the Unholy Trinity. It's a game, 3 games actually, that was made completely by one guy, and it's beautiful. Disturbing, gross, spooky even, but beautiful. How long did it take? I couldn't tell you, probably years, but the point is, there wasn't a CEO breathing down the creator's neck telling him what to do or giving him some kind of arbitrary deadline. Speaking of horror, horror is actually one of my favorite examples of this phenomenon because a lot of horror is so goddamn stupid. It's not scary, it's just predictable. Oh my god, was that a child laughing in the woods? Oh man, he's about to go check it out, isn't he? Uh-oh. She's looking in the mirror. I hope when she bends down to wash her face there isn't a person behind her. In big horror movies, there's this sense of safety because you know nothing too crazy will be shown. Staged deaths, tropey kills, and pretty tame stuff overall. Tame by comparison, I should say. I mean, it is still horror, but because all of the stockholders are ancient ass white guys who faint at the side of an ankle, it has to be somewhat toned down. But imagine this. It's 12 at night. You can't sleep, so you're scrolling on YouTube, and suddenly, this video pops up on your feed.
I am the angel Gabriel. I've come to bring good news.
News? For me?
Spooky. And because it's the internet, this could spiral into literally anything. And spiral it does.
I know what you dread.
And because it's the internet, there's no oversight here. Guys, I know it's YouTube, but just go with it. Pretend it's like Reddit or something. This is the Mandela Catalog, an analog horror series right here on YouTube. I'll link it below. It's by Alex Kister, and it's scary not because of cheesy jump scares or gore, but because the only limits to what can happen is the depths of Alex's imagination. Again, also YouTube content restriction guidelines, but just shut up. And it was made by only Alex, at least initially, in his room on an iPad. Which means everything I'm seeing is a direct expression of his religious trauma, upbringing, and his experiences with soul-eating monsters. It's him and him alone, which I think makes the horror and the lore way more engaging. My point here isn't to say, God, Hollywood is dead and every big movie sucks. In fact, so much of the best art I've seen has been AAA. My point is that when it's a smaller, less for-profit production, with no oversight, where the creator can just kind of do whatever their heart's desire, it leads to a more authentic, real piece of art. I think it gives a better idea of how the artist thinks or feels. The trade-off with that, though, is that the product is usually less polished, less well-produced, which would make it objectively bad art. I love seeing people go through tough times with only an old camera and a shitty guitar. Without the intervention of people who just want to make money, a piece of art can breathe, really be raw, unfiltered, and unabashed, which is literally the peak of art to me. In summation, bad art is good, actually, because it's way more personal and expressive. This is my first video, so I really hope that it turns out well. I'm not used to filming like this. I'm gonna get out of here and go make some bad art. Ta-ta!